Hello there. This story might sound dry at first, but believe you me, this is going to be unbelievable and kind of fun if I do it right, so let's get to it. Martial law reversed in South Korea after President's surprise decree sent shockwaves. Well, I mean, a sort of Western style country, a first world democracy, going into martial law is never good news. It's also not your usual Friday, but it's not inconceivable, I suppose. How does it relate to you? Well, obviously, we're all tied together with the global economy, and to an extent, political shockwaves in one country can affect others. It's also just nice to be aware of what's going on in the world, I guess. So the South Korean president Yoon Suk Yeol's cabinet has reversed a martial law order in the country just hours after he issued the surprise decree that plunged Seoul into political uncertainty and sparked fierce backlash from lawmakers across the political spectrum. So essentially, the president there decided to enact martial law, I believe, on the advice of his Minister of Defense, claiming that there is some sort of threat or plot to overturn democracy, backed by North Korea, I believe. It sounded very strange. If they actually have some proof, they might get away with it. Otherwise, I think at least some heads will metaphorically roll. The opposition Democratic Party says it will begin impeachment proceedings against Yoon if he doesn't step down immediately, which shouldn't surprise you, I suppose. We will not sit idly by and watch President Yoon's crime of destroying the constitution and trampling on democracy. The usual pandering. President Yoon should immediately resign voluntarily, while the leader of Yoon's ruling People's Power Party, Han Dong-hoon, apologized to the public in a statement to reporters Wednesday morning and called for the country's defense minister to be fired. The president must directly and thoroughly explain this tragic situation, he added. The Minister of Defense, who recommended the martial law, should be immediately dismissed and all the responsible must be held strictly accountable. The last time a South Korean president declared martial law was in 1980 during a nationwide uprising led by students and labor unions. Yoon had declared martial law in a surprise late-night address on Tuesday, reviving memories of a more painful authoritarian past. Incidentally, if you don't understand from the tone of CNN, the president is right-wing and the opposition is left-wing. So they know who the good and bad guys are. I, as a complete stranger to the situation, have no idea who's in the right or wrong. I'm just pointing out that CNN knows who their team is. And they don't seem to bring too much to the table in terms of proof. They are saying is that 190 of the 300 members of parliament voted to overturn the measure. That's literally just the opposition party. They have the majority. They also voted without the minority in play, I believe. Anyway, basically they evoke the memories of previous dictatorships in South Korea. And they also try to make him out to be a warmonger, which he might be, I have no idea. They talk about him taking a tough stance on North Korea, a shift from his predecessor who favored dialogue and peaceful reconciliation. Yoon lambasted this approach as subservient, promised to bulk up South Korea's military, hinting he would launch a preemptive strike if he saw signs of an offensive launch against Seoul. He faced political battles, sparring with the opposition Democratic Party, which has repeatedly impeached ministers and frustrated the government's fiscal plans. So they're definitely as divided as the US, or even more so. If you go to the Associated Press, they have a more neutral line on it, but they are still leaning left. So they give a bit more info about why he did this. Yoon ordered martial law without warning in a speech late Tuesday where he vowed to eliminate anti-state forces he said were plotting rebellion and accused the main opposition parties of supporting the country's rival North Korea. That's where I got the information. So they say Yoon gave no direct evidence when he raised the specter of North Korea as a destabilizing force. He has long maintained that a hard line against the North is the only way to stop Pyongyang from following through on its nuclear threats against Seoul. Until the late 1980s, South Korea had a series of strongmen who repeatedly invoked North Korea when struggling to control domestic dissidents and political opponents. Fair enough, I guess. Yoon has struggled to get his agenda through an opposition-dominated parliament while facing corruption scandals involving him and his wife. And of course, the Washington Post decided to be even more dramatic, saying South Korea's martial law crisis stirs memories of the 1918 Gwangju massacre. So the line across the Western media was right-wing president bad. Again, he might be, I have no idea. But it's very obvious that for now, the parliament has vetoed the martial law, and it doesn't seem as though anything dramatic is happening yet. What I wanted to talk about is this interesting story. I have two sources for it, the International Business Times and the Interpreter, which are more minor news organizations, but you can't find the major news organization, the mainstream media, touching it with a 10-foot pole. So I thought, why not bring it anyway? Because I have found a lot of smaller websites talking about it. It seems to be true. You can also see it on Wikipedia, even though I doubt Wikipedia is actually considered a reliable source of information for anyone. Anyway, South Korean President Park Geun-hye's relationship with her so-called shaman advisor. That's from 2016, incidentally. She was the president then, this Park Geun-hye. The shaman advisor was Choi Soon-si, and the relationship lies at the heart of the corruption scandal that prompted thousands of demonstrators, I believe they actually managed to get more than 1 million, to demand Park's resignation on 29 of October. So essentially, the advisor was in Germany for a time. I believe she was supposed to have businesses there and perhaps even some corrupt dealings, according to the information. Essentially, you can see that it's all about cults, which is what makes it interesting. So, Korean media reported that Choi apologized for her behavior as she stepped into the prosecutor's office, struggling to make her way through the crowds of protesters, security, and media. "I am so sorry," she told reporters before entering the office. "I've committed a capital offense." President Park acknowledged in a public apology on 25 October that Choi had edited some of her speeches and provided public relations help. An old hard drive belonging to Choi, who has never held public office, was found to contain classified documents allegedly dealing with government internal and foreign policies. So this woman, who was the daughter of a cult leader, a Christian sort of Buddhist mixed cult leader, was essentially advising the president, basically editing her speeches, making decisions on policy, on who to appoint and stuff like that, and the public knew nothing about it. So according to Korean media, exchanges between the two women show that the president was relying on Choi's advice for different issues, from trivial matters such as avoiding the colors red and white, I guess that's part of the cult, to whom to appoint to public office roles. She's also accused of creating an elite group of unofficial advisors called the Eight Fairies, who enjoyed preferential access to the president. That's the cult I was talking about. The story of how Choi grew to exercise such influence is rooted in the women's family ties. The two have known each other for over 40 years, as Choi's father, Choi Tae-min, was a close confidant of Park's father, military dictator Park Chung-hee. Choi Soon-si was born from Choi's fifth marriage, and she practices Korean shamanism, the country's oldest religion, also known as Muism or Sinism. Her father was a Buddhist policeman who converted to Christianity and later set up a cult called the Church of Eternal Life. In the guise of a spiritual leader, he became an advisor to Park's father and a mentor to her until his death in 1994. Korean media reports he won her trust by saying he was able to communicate with her late mother, who appeared to him in his dreams. His influence over the future president did not fail to register with international diplomats, as an American diplomatic cable from 2007 that was released by WikiLeaks said Park has also been forced to explain her own past, including her relationship some 35 years ago with a pastor, Choi Tae-min, whom her opponents characterized as a Korean Rasputin, and how he controlled Park during her time in the Blue House, Korea's presidential palace, when she was First Lady after her mother's assassination. More than the corruption and murky deal, what concerns the Korean people the most are the mystical undertones to the relationship. This is not even a dictatorship. I'm sorry if I butchered the names. Chairwoman of the main opposition Minju Party has reportedly stated, "It's a scary theocracy." And we have a bit more about actually what was going on with that strange cult. Both about the corruption, right? They basically say that every day we seem to learn that Park's longtime friend Choi Soon-sil, the daughter of a religious cult leader, has yet another tentacle wrapped around the government. The corruption pit is now so deep that it's difficult to triage all the damage that's been done. But the chronological list of Choi's recent sins would begin with the Mir Foundation, a non-profit organization she set up in October 2015 that managed to fundraise $43 million in under 48 hours. It was later revealed she's used her relationship with Park to browbeat money out of the nation's most powerful conglomerates. So there's a lot of corruption. There's also the religious undertones. They say here that Park, the president, was a brainwashed follower. A cabal known as the Eight Fairies runs state affairs, and that Park performed a cult ritual during her inauguration and has included incantations in her speeches. But it gets better. Park also allegedly changed the seal of the National Intelligence Service to that of a dragon because dragons are revered by members of the cult. The Mir Foundation, for instance, is named after an old Korean word for dragons, Mireo. And there are allegations that Choi has been using the 2018 Winter Olympics budget as a slush fund. She struck arms deals and treaties with foreign nations, had the entire culture ministry in her pocket, and was responsible for Hanjin Shipping's demise. So it's very interesting to think that something like this could happen. We often think about the more advanced Asian cultures like Japan and South Korea, and to a lesser extent China, as equivalent to modern Western democracies. In terms of technological advancement, they definitely are. But I guess nobody would say that China is, in terms of social advance, I mean, they're not anywhere close to democracy, they are a communist dictatorship. But all the same, the idea that there would be some sort of cabal or cult running the nation in the shadows would be fantastical to the average Western listener. However, it seems to have been not only proven true, but also been part of the impetus for the major difference in political opinion between men and women in Korea. If you saw a graph of the political affiliation of men and women in Korea, basically in recent years it's just completely diverged. Where like 10-20 years ago it was pretty much in lockstep. Men and women mostly voted the same. When one party rose, they rose with both genders, and the opposite was also true when a party dropped in ratings. But in the last like decade or a bit more, you can see, and it's actually expanding as time goes on. It's only getting worse. You can see a divergence where women go more and more to the left and men go more and more to the right, to the point that they're completely disconnected, and they have like a 50-60 point gap or something between them, maybe more, where women are very left-leaning and men are very right-leaning. There's a very strong feminist movement in Korea. I don't know if you heard of the 4B movement, recently imported to the US. Well, basically they don't date, don't have sex, don't marry, and don't birth children. And they say that's the 4B movement, the 4 things that they refuse to do, because essentially men are evil and misogynist. On the other hand, the, let's say, male part of South Korea, they have a very different view of it. It's a bit hard to pass exactly, because you can find very little of their own statements. Like if you Google search this or search it with Startpage or DuckDuckGo, I tried a lot of different search engines, but it's very difficult to actually find what the opposition thinks. All Western sources side firmly with the feminists, and forums and such, everything is just it's almost impossible to find actual, in their own words, right-wing, let's say, male advocates of Korea saying things in their own words to figure out what they think, as opposed to just what the opposition says they think. But it seems from the little I could get that essentially they feel as though they are being unfairly punished for past discrimination. Essentially that they are being discriminated against for the sins of their ancestors that they didn't benefit from, and that the feminism that's rooted in South Korea is sort of female supremacist and men hating. And so they feel as though it is a societal evil that they can't abide. And meanwhile, of course, the feminists say the same things that feminists the world over say. That society is prejudiced against women, that men are, violent and misogynistic and sexist, that they commit offenses against women, and that they don't prosecute them fairly, and that the women need more, how to put it, positive discrimination to make up for past grievances and to reach equality, or rather equity. So the idea that this cult was a part of it is something that I heard a couple of times, but I couldn't find good enough sources to be confident to bring it here. I will say, however, that it makes sense. I mean, think about it. At the time, you had a female president that's essentially influenced heavily by a religious organization that is exclusively female. And from what I heard, they passed policies that were, how to put it, heavily weighted against the male part of the population, at least to the mind of the people being affected. We definitely need to be careful not to allow something similar to take root in our own countries. The people specifically in danger of it, I think, right now, are in the United States, the Americans. Because with the rise of Trump, you might see a segment of the people, the female population, really internalizing the idea that society is misogynistic and hates them, and that they must rise up and fight against it. Essentially, the 4B movement, which is something that you really don't want to take root in your country. Korea has the lowest birth rate in the world and the worst relationship between men and women. And obviously, men and women should complement each other, should work together, and shouldn't hate each other. That said, there isn't much that you can do if you find that the opposite gender has, by and large, taken on that mindset. I mean, if you are hated day in and day out, and especially if the other side maintains control of society, and you are faced with that hatred on a daily basis wherever you look, then it's very difficult not to feel bitterness and resentment as a result of it. I can say that to an extent, the sort of slow, or in recent years more rapid, takeover of pretty much all online spaces by what I see as man-hating versions of feminists has definitely taken a toll on me and on my sort of gut feelings as far as women are concerned. Not that I hate women, but I am more defensive and I am more critical than I used to be, just in the way I feel, due to the fact that I honestly perceive an attempt to shut down and convert and recreate in a different constellation everything that I enjoyed online, and things that, in my opinion, were not at all misogynistic. Certain forms of media that contained strong female characters, which is to say, female characters that were smart and moral and were willful, but they didn't compete with men in masculinity. They were still feminine, meaning to say they didn't try to emulate everything that the West calls toxic masculinity, the feminists call toxic masculinity, and they didn't try to reverse gender roles. And because of that, they were, I guess, not strong enough, not good enough. And so what you end up with is people who feel as though they're not allowed to have a space to themselves, they're not allowed to have differing opinions, they're not allowed to have their own likings, preferences. And as a result of that, they definitely feel attacked. I feel attacked often in online spaces just for essentially wanting to be a traditional man. And something like that definitely has an influence. If the rise of the right wing in the United States allows left-wing propaganda to make women feel the same way, but worse, more pronounced, we may see the same kind of division in the United States as took place in North Korea and I think in South Korea. And I think it would be a big shame and a huge loss. We definitely shouldn't make people feel this way. There should be a place for women to say what they think, to discuss among themselves, to choose the entertainment that they like, to hold opinions that differ from the majority if they want to. And they shouldn't feel threatened, obviously. I don't think they have cause to. I've seen quite a few meltdowns in recent weeks since the election of Donald Trump. And what they scream about is mostly nonsensical to my eyes. I have never heard anyone in the Trump administration saying that they will enforce any sort of limitations on their, how to put it, bodily autonomy in any way, which seems to be the rallying cry. They just said specifically the states are going to be able to legislate, so the majority in each state, on the topic of abortion. So you will still be able to just, travel to the next state over and have an abortion there if you really need to. Also, I think most states would not have any worse laws on abortion than, say, Europe. Literally the only place in the world that I know of that allows late-term abortions is the liberal states in the left-wing states in the United States. Europe, which is considered left-wing, and incidentally, Canada as well. That all the liberals claim every time that Trump or a right-winger wins that they will, leave America too. All of these places actually have stricter abortion laws than most United States states, most of the states in the USA. So I honestly don't feel as though that this sort of meltdown is more warranted, but what's warranted and what people experience and feel might be two different things. And while yes, facts don't care about your feelings, as Ben Shapiro likes to say, if enough people feel strongly enough, it can have an impact on reality, on society. Not in any metaphysical sense, but simply because those feelings will guide their behavior, and their behavior could be destructive. So we should try and extend a hand in friendship to these people, even though they seem completely unhinged. Maybe when they calm down a bit, and after we are over the euphoria of victory, we can try and sort of approach them and show them we're not as bad as they believe we are. We really don't have to be as divided as we currently are. The echo chamber that has held them hostage for so long, in my opinion, is starting to melt. That's essentially why there's so much hatred of Elon Musk right now on the left, because his purchase of Twitter has broken the echo chamber to an extent. Not fully yet, but it has started the job. And if Trump actually does what he said about Section 230, forcing social media companies to stop censoring and allow a diversity of opinion if they want to enjoy protection from liability as the public square, which they claim to be, at the same time they also claim to be speakers themselves enjoying the First Amendment, which is a cognitive dissonance that I don't understand how the courts in America has not picked up on yet. Well, if Trump actually does that, I think we'll be able to have a useful dialogue, at least once the angst has died down, and sort of stop this division between men and women from getting any worse. Which, in my opinion, is something that we must do as a civilization, or else we will simply cease to be. If you look at forecasts on birth rates globally, they are exceedingly pessimistic. So mending the tear between men and women seems to me like a very important and I might even say crucial step forward. So this video has covered a number of subjects. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was interesting and fun. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.